Locked in on the red and gold.
What a run by George Kittle!
And good morning, Larry Krueger and Lorenzo Neal on the Kickoff Show here on 95.7 The Game, presented by Habas Law. You've been wrong. Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURED or visit their website, habaslaw.com, Habbas law.com. Week 18 in the NFL, and we've got the Niners and the Rams later today here at Levi's. Good morning, Lo. Good to see you, and Happy New Year to everybody and all the 95.7 The Game listeners. And, Lo, man, what a day for football. The game doesn't have a lot of juice because the Niners have clinched the 1 seed. It's going to be a very complicated game today for Kyle Shanahan of who to play, how long to go with them. But we're not going to see Brock Purdy. We're not going to see Matthew Stafford. The Rams do have kind of something to play for because they could be the 6th seed or the 7th seed. But they're sitting out a slew of guys. And it's week 18 around the league. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great, brother. It's always good to see you. It's always good to work with you. And just before we even get into the game, as I digress, you just think about a great year. You and I, year 2, a couple of years we've been at this, and just going through the process. And remember opening day, you and I were talking about, man, couldn't wait for the season. Couldn't wait to see what the Niners were going to be. Where were they going to? What was their record going to be? I thought it was 10. You might have thought it 12. And just watching the process, having the ebb and flow of football, good weeks, bad weeks. You never thought it would be 3 bad weeks in a row, but you didn't probably think it was going to be the number 1 seed. You said, man, there's a good chance that it could be the number 1 seed. It was the verdict was still out and still out by some people week to week about Purdy and what's next. When you just look at what football gave us, Larry, you and I, to talk about, there's a bunch of teams and a bunch of radio hosts that are getting ready to put their bags up and say, you know what, now we're just going to talk about the Niners. Now we're just going to talk about the Cowboys. And they're getting ready to make that transition because their team is home. But we're in the thick of things. The team that we cover is number 1 in the NFC. They have a chance to do something great, and the hay's in the barn, so all they got to do is keep performing.
Yeah, it is. You're so right on so many fronts. It's like, this thing, you always want to feel grateful. And by the way, as we get it rolling today, we got John Lucan running the show back at the mothership, and of course,
Big John,
the great Tim Jordan in the house.
He's amazing,
looking fresh and rejuvenated.
He had the shades on. He came in stunning, dropping off stuff, being big time. Tim is always, he stays pretty in the face, slim in the waist. Timmy does it all, and his wife loves him. By the way, she loves the Bengals. Me and her, we go way back. Tim gets a little jealous every now and then, but I know she's listening.
As jealousy is not a bad thing, not always a bad thing. But Tim's looking remarkably refreshed from the holidays. But on a serious note, you just never know how these seasons are going to go. And, man, I'll say the one thing. They say time flies when you're having fun.
No question.
And we have had so much fun. And it is amazing. It seems like just yesterday we're sitting here sweating, standing out on the field at camp. And many of the 95.7 The Game hosts, whether it be Bonte or Shasky or Dibbs and Willard and these guys coming down here for some of the training camp practices, and we're all sitting there sweating, and it's hot as heck. And then you go through the fall, and there's even warmer weather in September and October, and then you starts to get crisp, and it starts to get like football weather. And today it's downright pretty cold. And now you see the heat lamps out here at the Santa Clara Hilton, their pregame party, which is always going on. People should always check this out. Pregame, postgame, they really party right here at the Hilton.
Did you think it would? Did you think
it's
it would
an
be
awesome
here?
Thing,
No. That's why I had to, jump in and interject because did you think would be here? I mean, in some facets, playoffs. Yeah, you hope, and you like, okay, it can happen. But what has been your thought process of what this team has done and what they've accomplished? What has it been this year?
Well, it's like there's this weird thing about football that's different than the other sports in that there is the injury factor.
Yes, no question.
You have to be blessed somewhat by the luck gods to get to the winner's circle. I mean, the 49ers have in some years have had 20 to 25 guys on IR. And you just never know how it's going to go. The one thing that was really clear to me, now I've been a believer in Brock Purdy since the outset. I won't pretend that, I didn't believe. I've been a believer. But this summer, what really stood out at camp were three guys. Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, and Deebo Samuel. Those three offensive weapons all showed up in premier shape. Deebo was lean, really lean, and his weight has fluctuated. Ayuk was awesome this summer. High balls, low balls. The catch radius was otherworldly. And Chris CMC, since minicamp low, really set the tone. He reminded me a lot of Jerry Rice, Junior Seau. Guys like that I remember practicing when the Niners and the Chargers used to practice together in the 90s. And you could say, who stands out? Well, Jerry and Junior stood out like from a satellite. And if you watch minicamp this year, you could have noticed Christian McCaffrey. If you knew nothing about football, he just was that electric. He stood out above a field of great athletes. He stood out as the best. But you never know about health. And now they've gotten through this season. Everybody's still pretty healthy, even though CMC's a little dinged up. And the Niners got everything out of this regular season that they wanted. They wanted the 1 seed, home field advantage, relative health, momentum going into the playoffs, and it's all there. Now, we all know this is a franchise that is not the Carolina Panthers. They're not celebrating trips to the playoffs. Here. They're not celebrating trips to the Super Bowl here. They want the ring. Jed wants it. John wants it. Kyle wants it. The players want it. Everybody's all about it. There has been, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but we've seen it this year, Lo. There has been this uncomfortable intensity about and angst around this 49er team all year long because they know that they're not happy unless they get the 6th Lombardi in the trophy case. It's incredibly high standards. It sets you up for failure. It almost dictates that it's elation or devastation at the end. The stakes get risen up every single week, and they would not have it any other way.
When you say that, Larry, and you talk about the team and where they're at and what Cal and like you just went through and what, John and what they all want. Will you consider this like Michael Jackson has toured? This is it? Is this the year that you say it's Super Bowl win but do you see a team that's going to be descending or just the uncertainty with free agency? You could possibly, all the different things that are surrounding this team. Is it safe to tell? Is it safe for me to say that the way you're feeling is you believe this is the year or possibly bust?
Well, you know what? I think that the
barring injuries. We have to talk about injuries.
The more I've been around pro football, the more I feel like I take on the mindset of the players themselves, which is don't live in the future, don't live in the past, live in the present. You know what I mean? As the great Dusty Baker said to me one time in the Giant clubhouse. Tomorrow is promised to nobody.
Yeah.
Right? We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, especially in a sport like this. Heck, the Steelers won yesterday against the Ravens, but they lost T.J. Watt, and he probably is not going to make their first playoff game. So, you know what? Don't go. And when I remember the Harbaugh Niners, I kept thinking, they're going to be on top forever. And 3 years later, 4 years later, Jim's gone, Bowman's gone, Willis is gone. The whole thing, which looked like it was going to be together, Kaepernick, Aldon Smith, these guys were going to be awesome forever. They weren't.
Right.
So don't think about yesterday. Don't think about tomorrow. Just think about today. Try to stay in the present. But, I mean, to your point, Trent Williams is an older player. George Kittle.
I know.
How many more years does he have? Nick Bosa's on the top of his game. How long is that going to last? It looks, when you're on top, it looks like it's going to last forever. When you're on the bottom, it looks like you're never going to get there. Right now, they're trying to fight their way to the top. It's the sixth Lombardi has been elusive.
Yeah.
I sat in the Superdome watching 1st and goal from the 5.
Yeah.
Watching Harbaugh choke that away. I watched the Niners have a 10-point lead against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl in Miami, only to see Mahomes and Reed run them over down the stretch. So I take nothing for granted. I feel great about their chances. But because Trent Williams is maybe the best player on the team, future Hall of Famer, I don't know how long he's going to play. There is definitely some urgency, not just with Trent, but with the entire organization that they've tasted it. The Miami Super Bowl may have been a little bit before ahead of schedule. Now this regime's been here for a number of years, 7 years. Shanahan's looks like he's aged 15 years in those 7 years. It is time to get it done. And they know it. The players know it. We know it. We can talk about other things, but that's really the standard. Not to mention, Eddie D is still a major influence on this organization, and his standard always was, get it done. But I think there's more juice this year than I've ever seen covering this team, as far as there's more determination, focus, angst, nervousness. There's a lot of tight people because they want that ring. They want that 6th Lombardi, and they want it bad.
I couldn't agree with you more. And you know what? And mine's going to be, I know you were pulling different things from what coaches and organizations, what people say and different coaches. Mine's, of course, the movie, Kung Fu Panda. Yesterday's history. Tomorrow's a mystery. Today's a present. So live in it. It's a gift. And sometimes you look at this situation, and I totally agree with you. I think not only are the Niners ready for this moment? Like you said, players are getting older. Things surrounding them, you don't know about the future. You look at Juszczyk getting older. Don't know if he'll be back. All the different things surrounding this team. I believe this is their season. I believe that next year, we can't think about that. You don't know what's going to happen. Free agency, draft, all those different things. But barring injuries now, I think this is the year. And not only do I believe it is the year, I believe the first time in the 49ers organization in a long time, maybe besides the year when they beat the Chargers in the Super Bowl, we just motorboated them, but you knew that NFC Championship game, you wasn't sure what was going to happen. I think for the first time, this team, if it plays the way that we know it's capable of, I think that they're the better team in the whole NFL for the first time in any Super Bowl, in this era. To me, looking at this team, if they play 49er football and barring injury, don't you feel that this is the best team in the NFL?
It's the best Niner team. I totally agree with you, since that 94 team that won it all in January of 95.
And not to take it, and we're just talking about, and we're just saying
the most complete team in all three phases.
Yes, and that's where I'm at. I don't think maybe necessarily better, but I'm just saying it's better compared to all the opponents and the competition. That 94 team was special. I get it, but I'm saying when you look at this team compared to the league, I think it has an advantage more than that team.
Yeah. I don't see a team in the NFC. We'll get to it later today, but I don't see a team in the NFC that can beat them. And I think if they lose to any of these teams in the NFC playoffs, it's going to be a huge disappointment. Huge disappointment. Let's take me behind the face mask and into the mindset of the player, because it's week 18. There are 18 teams that are going home today. 18 teams are going to say, that's it. 1, 2, 3, Cancun.
You're right.
You played a long time. How many years exactly in the NFL?
16 seasons.
16 years. How many of those years did you make it to the playoffs?
2, a handful, maybe seven. So the majority of the times not. 4 with the Saints. Never got to the playoffs. We were the Aints.
Yeah.
The Jets were 1 game away. We needed some help to get into playoffs.
Music City Miracle.
Yeah. Titans, that was 2 years. We went to the playoffs 2 years with the Titans. But Jets, we didn't get in. Tampa Bay, when I was with the Bucks, we didn't get in. Needed some help and needed, So Chargers, of course, the 5 years with them, got in, 3 of those years, 4 of those years. And then Baltimore, AFC Championship game, lost to the Steelers. So been to the playoffs, 1 Super Bowl, handful of playoffs. But I'm telling you, I've been on the losing end of that. And I'm telling you, when you're in that place where you're going to the playoffs, it's different. Your body feels a lot better. When you're at the end of the year and you're not in the playoffs, Larry, you feel it. You said, man, I just want to get through this game. You're psyching yourself out. That whole week, you know that you're already packed. If you're renting, you already said, okay, you already packed up some of your stuff. You know you're going to have the exit physical on the next day. Go, don't want to get hurt. So you can go in, exit physical, go talk to your position coach, talk to the head coach, and you want to get out of there. So that whole week, man, Larry, it's about staying focused. It's about, okay, I'm going to watch even more film. Okay, I'm going to go in here and practice and I'm going to do some extra running because I know that, hey, look, they're going to watch this tape really even harder because that's what coaches say. That's their battle cry. It's, look, you may not be on this team next year. I want to see what kind of heart the guys have because usually that last game, guys are trying to get out of the way. They don't want to get hurt. Like you said, their cars are packed, your bags are packed, and you're trying to say, I just want to stay injured. So a lot of teams, you'll see teams today that's not playing for nothing, get blown out. It's sloppy football. So those are those mental aspects of the game that when you're on the losing end that you're just trying to get through. So psychologically, as a player, you had to be focused and had to say, I have to do my job because my name and my reputation is on my performance.
So interesting. And if you were on those 7 years that you made it to the playoffs, what was today like?
Man. Today's like, I remember being in a situation where you have the bye and it's like, okay, you ain't going to play a lot, but you still wanted to go out there and just work on timing. All week long, you're just like, everyone's happy. It's upbeat. You're like, man, it's like you're freaking getting ready to go on vacation, even though you're not going on vacation because you're getting ready to turn a page. So it's like, we're already in the playoffs. We know we're not going to play much, but man, our mindset is like, okay, we get our regular pay season checks are done, but guess what? I'm getting ready to start getting more money, getting ready to start getting paid again because it's a brand new season. And it's like everyone's watching you. So I'm telling you, when the playoffs, your energy, your work ethic, you start saying, look, I'm going to do a couple extra sets on the bench. I'm going to make sure I'm running a little bit more to get in better shape. Okay, I want to make sure that I'm perfect in the playoffs. So it's a total different mindset. It's a different type of physicality. It's a different type of everything around the playoffs because you know that your buddies are calling you, man, congratulations, you're in the playoffs. In their home, guys are calling you, hey, man, come watch you play. And you just like, you are one of the only elite shows still left in the National Football League. So yes, it is unbelievable to be in the playoffs and your body, mentally, physically, spiritually, you just feel different.
So much to play football, and I don't know, I don't care if you played a year of high school football or if you played pro football for 20 years. The old saying, there's no easing into a street fight.
No.
And you can't, this is not a sport where you can go through the motions and just kind of, I'm there, but I'm not really there.
Right.
You have to be all in to play this game where you're going to get seriously hurt. And yet, as the playoffs start, the stakes
get higher.
And there's more chips in the middle of the table. How often do you think about the Super Bowl, that game, and the game where the closest that you ever got to a Super Bowl ring? How often? I mean, I know you're a down to earth guy. You got other things. You don't seem to me, Lo, as a guy who belabors the past. But that was the closest that you ever got to wearing that Super Bowl ring and being at the top of your profession. Though you were on the top of your profession individually, but as a team, and it's a team sport. How often do you think about that Super Bowl defeat?
Every single week.
Really? Every single week.
Especially during football season, there's not a week that doesn't go by. There's not a day that doesn't go by that I don't think about football pretty much. Just like, you see a football and you're like, man, you have some flashbacks. It's life. It's nothing. It's been, there's things that you did in your life, whether it's a radio show, whether it's an interview, whether it's, something happened in your life. You always reflect back. It's just being a human. It's the way your mind is programmed. An interview, man, you might be driving and thinking, man, you listen to the radio, whatever it is, and you're thinking about, man, God, I remember interviewing that guy. That's how football is. I remember those moments, and it's like, how many times an interview comes like, God, I should ask that question. You think about that in football, it's like, even though I was at the top of my game and the peak of my game, I wish I could go back. I wish I could go back, and I wish that what I knew now, what I would do, I think I would have won like 5 Super Bowls. I think one guy that doesn't get enough credit, and I think he would go back and say he think he can win more, and what he does not get enough credit for because of his tenacity and his willingness and the mental and the psyche of it, not necessarily the physical, but the psyche of it, and what he was able to do is, I don't think you'll ever see another one like him.
Who's that?
Tom Brady. I'm telling you, to win that many Super Bowls, to be in the playoffs, to be that focused, to make sure that you can let everything else around you go.
To have that hunger despite the success.
That part. Man, because you were at the top of the game, but man, it was times that I was like, okay, cool. We're in the playoffs, and you know what? And I could have watched some more film. We're in the playoffs, and guess what? I think I could have challenged guys at practice more and be like, guys, hey, slow down. I should have been like, no, move. There was things that I know now without a doubt as a leader. Maybe said, you know what? Maybe shouldn't have had a pop or had a drink with a guy that was a younger player. Maybe shouldn't have had, in the regular season before the playoffs. Maybe shouldn't have went out on a Friday night. Maybe shouldn't have on Sunday after the game. Maybe shouldn't have drank. I'm telling you, there's so many things now that I know that what I should have done and should I even sacrifice even more. Even though I was a Pro Bowler, all-decade team, all those things, I know that I could have done better as a leader, and I know I could have helped my team be better. And I know in San Diego, we're at the chart, it's no way we should not have won a Super Bowl. And if we would have had more leaders, and if I could have been even a better leader, it's no way. It's no way. It's no way that team, it's no way that Titan team, it's no way that that if there was enough guys, and if me included, could have done more, it could have been better. So I know. So when you ask me, what is it like and what do I feel? That's what I feel. I feel like sometimes I wish I could go back in time because I know I left more. I'm not saying I didn't leave it on the field, but I know mentally, physically, the little things I could have done to be a leader to help the whole team and galvanize and bring everyone up higher. I could have done that because the opportunity was given to me.
That's also riveting. It's as far as, the commitment that these guys make to each other.
Yeah.
That's really what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I remember Steve Young at the end of Super Bowl, the Super Bowl was, I guess, 29 in 1994, January of 95.
Yeah.
He's on the stage and he's holding that Lombardi trophy and he's talking to his teammates and he's like, guys, it was dark. There were dark moments. We committed to each other and and it's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's okay. How focused are you? How determined are you? It really takes it's not only about talent and scheme.
No.
It's about collective commitment of every coach, every player, every scout, every executive. Everybody's got to be all in, and the team that has the most people all in will establish that momentum. Why? Because when the calendar goes from December to January, do you still continue to get better as a football team? And the teams that John Lynch referenced it this week on the radio. If you continue to get better in January, those are the teams that wind up in the winner's circle, in the first week in February in the Super Bowl. You got to commit to each other. You got to, whatever. You're going to do the extra lifting. You're going to go to bed early. You're going to be all about your playbook. You're going to take one more look at the game plan. You're going to do that extra lifting. You're going to put in the extra work. You're not going to go out. You're going to tell your buddy that comes in from out of town, hey, I'll catch you next time. All those things that go into committing to your brothers, that's what gets it done.
No question, 1,000%. And that's why I admire Tom Brady, because you got to turn it up just a little bit more. And yeah, guys are still able to get by and win a Super Bowl. But the reason why that New England Patriot team was so consistent, you still got the same coach running the team, is because Tom Brady knew how to turn it up. He knew to push those receivers. Why could he take average guys that, could run 4.6, 4.7, and make those receivers beat guys in man-to-man, run the best option routes? Look at Wes Walker. Look at some of those guys. Let's talk about, they couldn't outrun most of those guys that were covering. They wasn't faster than most of those guys that are covering. They wasn't stronger than more of those guys that are covering. And people sit and say, why? Because it's attention to details, and it's not the size of the muscles and all those things. It's the heart and the desire. And that is what football is. You can't tell me that some of those Patriot team had a bunch of talent on offense and defense. Yeah, you had them in certain spots, but it was just a team that was focused and did their job and had ability in their heart and their determination and being in the right time, knowing the right alignment and assignment. That's what transitioned into Super Bowls. And that's what a lot of teams and a lot of players don't have. And that's why Shanahan is telling these guys. That's why Hal Juszczyk, and when you listen to Trent and you listen to all these guys, they're committed because they know they've been in this twilight for the last 5 to 7 years, like you just alluded to. NFC championships, been in Super Bowls, been in an NFC championship, and so close. And now they have it. Now they've always been kind of in that deal, looking up at the top of the mountain saying, man, we upset this team. Okay, let's go on. When they went on the road, beat Green Bay, almost beat the Rams. When they, you look at it, they always had to be on the mountain and been kind of looking up to say, God, we got to get there. Can we get there? And now for the first time, you have everything set that you are the team to beat. No question. This is a team to beat. They understand what's at stake. And now, can they finish? Can they close the chapter? Can they close this year's season lifting up that Lombardi trophy?
There's a ton of pressure as this thing gets ramped up. And I don't know if the fans see that. And yeah, as we talk about the commitment that these guys make to each other, sometimes the pressure gets the best of them. Sure. Barrett Robbins couldn't handle the pressure. Yep. The Raiders got beat. Yep. Stanley Wilson against the Niners for the Bengals. We had Joe Kelly and Ickey Woods on. Couldn't handle the pressure. OD'd on the night before the Super Bowl. Couldn't handle that intensity, and his team lost. So you're up in the intensity, you're up in the ante, and only the strong survive. Now today, as far as sitting today, no Brock Purdy, no Christian McCaffrey, no Eric Armstead, no Ambry Thomas, no Jair Brown, no Ross Dwelly, he's been placed on IR, no Tayshaun Gibson, no Jawan Jennings. Kyle Juszczyk was ill this week. We're going to have to find out if he goes. John Feliciano's battling back pain. We're going to have to see if he goes. Ray McLeod has been activated from the IR. Taylor Hawkins and Jeremy McNichols have been called off the practice squad. The Rams are resting Matthew Stafford, Kyron Williams, Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, Ernest Jones, and then tight end Tyler Higbee's got a shoulder. The lineman Joe Notaboom's got a foot injury. Those guys are out as well. Big Trent's playing? Next segment, let's get into it, because Steve Young was critical this week of the Niners' decision to not play Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is going to sit for 3 weeks. His last game was December 31st. If the Niners in the divisional round play on Sunday, he won't play again till January the 21st. Rest versus rust. Lowe's been there. We'll talk to him about it next. You're listening to, of course, 95.7 The Game, 49er Kickoff Show, presented by Habas Law. You've been wronged. Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURED or visit habaslaw.com. More from the Santa Clara Hilton as we get you ready for Week 18. Niners and Rams, beautiful day for football on 95.7 The Game.
At Merrill West Credit Union, we're working towards a brighter financial future for both our members and our community, knowing that when you succeed, we all succeed. Let's get acquainted with our premier savings for new members, now paying over 20 times the national average. Another great reason to move your money to a credit.
Back to the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game.
And good morning to everybody. Larry Krueger and Lo Neal here at the Santa Clara Hilton. It's the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game as we get you ready for the Niners and the Rams Week 18 action. And, of course, we're presented by Habas Law. You've been wronged. Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURED or visit their website, habaslaw.com, Habbas law.com, habaslaw.com. We thank them for sponsoring the Kickoff Show. And we talked a little bit about a lot of things in that opening segment, but, man, the story of today, Lo, is rest versus rust. Kyle Shanahan has opted to sit Brock Purdy. So, essentially, Brock Purdy is going to be off from last week's game against the Commanders, which was December 31st, to either January 20th if they play on the Saturday or the 21st if they play on the Sunday. Steve Young, on his radio hit, said that he's really concerned about the rust factor for Purdy. And I understand. And Steve, you know, everybody's got that's what I love about Steve. He's honest. He's real. He's been there, and he's not afraid to go against the grain. I mean, when he said that, he knew Kyle Shanahan was sitting, Brock Purdy for 3 weeks, and he's like, you know what? I'm just going to give you my honest perspective anyway. And Steve's honest perspective is that he thinks that's too much time off, and that when he had, a similar type experience, that it took him a half of football to really get reacclimated after that time off. And you know it better than anybody. You can lose the game. We saw it in the NFC Championship game last year against the Eagles. You can lose the game in the first half. You can lose the game in the first quarter. And so you got to hit the ground, ready to roll. So that was his thought. What's your thought on it? Because I actually agree. I understand where Steve's coming from, but I think John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers are making the right decision here. But how do you see it?
Well, I see it that on both sides. I mean, I totally can see what Steve Young is saying. You're a quarterback and you're timing. You want to make sure that the command of the huddle, getting real game speed to say, hey, look, go. Understand guys are going to be coming at you. Understanding because you'll do things in a game that you won't do at practice. Meaning that, okay, the guy's coming in your face, getting ready to sack you. Brock Purdy might whirl around. He might scramble and roll out of the pocket. Or he might just try to duck and go underneath him. He's going to do something that he wouldn't do at practice. At practice, a guy comes on and he'll just throw the ball on the ground. Or he'll just, just like, you can't hit him, they'll blow the whistle and call it off. If a guy get beat, an offensive lineman get beat. That happens in a game. Offensive lineman gets beat, the guy's bearing down on you, and you have to decide, what do I do? You don't have time you react. Football's not a time to think about what's going to happen. You react. Football's a reaction sport. Yes, you go to know the play and all those things, but what happened when things get off schedule? And that's where, so I agree with Steve in that part. The part that I don't and where I'm with Shanahan in that camp is because I know that they can simulate a game speed tempo and say, look, we're just not going to hit this guy. I know that Kyle Shanahan's offense is predicated on timing. So you know that you can go out and say, look, guys, we're not going to practice. We're not going to play the game. We're not going to play these guys. But what we are going to do, we're going to go full speed today. And I want you guys to knock down balls. I want you to still strip the quarterback. I want you to emulate, give him close as you can. And guess what, Purdy? I want you to move. You know what? Guys are going to tag off on you, but I want you to continue to roll out just like you're in a game. If someone's in your face, I don't want you to throw the ball in the ground unless that's what you do in the game. Hey, I want you to roll out of that, and they might tag off, but you keep running and you keep your eyes downfield and do the things you do. So I think that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch understands that, look, we got to push these guys. I understand the hitting and the physicality won't be there, but we can get the game speed. We can get close to it. So I think that's the saving grace. And I think that when you look at this team, it's not a team that says, hey, look, we're just going to be physical all the time. It's by design, it's by finesse, and it's by speed, and it's by making teams cover every blade of grass.
Purdy's had an amazing year. Not only he's the NFL's leading vote getter for the Pro Bowl, which was amazing if you really think about it. This guy was Mr. Irrelevant, didn't even play last year until Week 13. Now he's the highest. No NFL player, regardless of position, got more votes from the fans for the Pro Bowl than Brock Purdy. Led the Niners to a 12-4, start here after 16 games. Threw for 4,280 yards, 31 touchdowns, 11 picks. Completed 69.4% of his passes, had a 113 quarterback rating. The kid's had a great year. The question is, how much time is too much time?
Right.
How much time is too much time off? I think every guy's a little different. Obviously the 3 weeks off heals bumps and bruises.
Right.
There's a saying in football, hey, by the time you get to week 15, week 16, everybody's hurt. Tell me when you're injured. So everybody's got something. You got, a bulky hammy, a quad that's tight, a bruised thigh. You got a chest contusion. You got something. Everybody's walking around with something. Almost every guy in that locker room, if you go up to him and you say, how do you feel? Well, they feel fine for week 18, but they're going to feel better 3 weeks after the season's over than they feel in season. I would say the Niners made the right call. Here's why I think they made the right call. One, Brock played well in week 1 in Pittsburgh and Heinz Field. He did not play that final preseason game. He really played well against the Steelers. Then I thought one of his best games this year, when you factor in arm strength and focus and intensity and everything, was the game in Jacksonville, where the Jags had won like 5 in a row. They were playing great, but the Niners were coming off the bye, and in that game, Purdy showed better arm strength. There was a little bit more electricity in his arm. He doesn't have a Flacco, Mahomes, Terry Bradshaw, for your old-timers, type arm. He's got requisite arm strength. In that Jacksonville game, if you remember, he maybe the most impressive throw of the year was when he cocked it to go to Ayuk on the shallow cross, saw Kittle on the wheel route on the right side, locked up with the linebacker Devin Lloyd, and without even being able to really step into it, he just reached back and threw it to him and led Kittle for the touchdown. Showed amazing arm strength on that play. So, to me, the way he looked in Jacksonville arm strength-wise, and then you factor in who he is. This guy, is coming off elbow surgery in the offseason.
Right.
If you go back to Iowa State, this is his first full year, right? He was a rookie last year. At Iowa State, the most games he ever played was 13. He's already played with the 16 games and the 2 preseason games that he played. He's already played 18. They're going to have him play 21 if they go to the Super Bowl. The most passes he's ever attempted in his entire career is 475. He's at 459 right now. He's going to far exceed that.
Right.
So this week, him and Darnold split the number 1 reps, even though Darnold's playing and Brock's not. And Brock made the point this week. He's like, hey, people were asking him about it. He's like, I had my own concerns about the rest versus rust and this and that. He's like, but it's not like I'm going to be laying around on the couch for 3 weeks. I'm going to be working. I'm going to be practicing. I'm going to be going through mental reps. I'm going to be, and it really comes back to his level. Who is Brock Purdy?
He's a pro.
Do you feel like he's going to have that incredible professionalism, and he's going to do the mental reps, and he's going to be all in, and he's going to get to bed early, and he's going to be in his playbook, and he's going to be really mentally engaged and physically engaged in practice? Or, is he going to tune out and be like, hey, man, I'll worry about, the game in 10 days from now?
Right.
I think he's the kind of guy that's so all about football that they don't have to worry about that. And for me, Lo, it comes down to what can you live with? And I can live with a series of rust in the divisional round way more than I could live with. He pulled a hammy playing today against the Rams, and he can't really sprint away like he normally does.
Yeah.
He's somewhat physically diminished because of an injury that can happen at any point. Anytime you suit it up, there's always a chance of injury, even major injury. I could live with rust over he's not there or rust over he's not 100%.
I totally agree, and I think to your point, that when you talk about guys, rust versus time and all those different things, I don't think he'll lose his timing, but I think that sometimes I remember being injured or, coach wanted you to take maybe a day off as far as the physicality of it. Sometimes those workouts are even tougher. You got a trainer that's going to be there with you. They're going to have you running gassers or you're going to put the bands on his arm and have to go through the different things, they put the bands behind your legs and holding you. So you can actually, with 2 weeks of work, you can actually get stronger. You can actually get faster, believe it or not, because now you're not in a football you're in a football environment still doing all the other stuff, but now you're able to put more time into your body. You're able to do more things like, okay, I got to work out more. Okay, I'm going to work out in a different way, not just lifting weights, but now I have more guys that's going to be stretching me. Now I'm going to be in the pocket where, they got the band work and the different things you're doing to do. So some of your fundamentals and a lot of those things can even get better. Why in the offseason can guys get in better shape? Why did you talk about Deebo Sanders coming back in shape? How much faster? Ayuk and all these different guys. Why? Because the offseason they're able to put on and work even harder. So when you take this type of approach, I think you'll see Purdy with more arm strength. You'll have the different things that you're talking about that he'll have with some of this rest as well.
You played a lot of years in the league. We'd already talked about that. Did you ever get to the finish line or near the finish line and thought to yourself, I'm out of gas?
Yeah.
Do you remember a particular year where you felt like, hey, man, I'm mentally, I'm here. I want to do it. But, the mind is there, but the body ain't willing, kind of a thing.
Absolutely. Year 16, AFC Championship game. I remember going in that week, and I was injured. My neck was kind of jacked up, and I just was tired. My hamstrings and stuff was tight. We played the Steelers already 3 times, 2 times, and we were in the AFC. We beat the Titans. I remember a play against the Titans, caught a screen and turned back into a guy. Bam, just my neck just felt it, just a little stinger, and just was physical. We had LaRon McClain and Ray Rice. I was blocking for both those guys. I mean, that 16th year, Harbaugh, he banged me. I mean, he was like, look, we're going to use you. They brought me in, and I was that battling ram. I was lining up.
You had a rep at that point. You had a reputation as a guy who was incredibly physical, who would bang heads. He wanted that, which is why he wanted you on his team, and then he wanted to use you that way.
And exactly what he did, brother. You hit the nail on the head. And, and Cam Cameron was the offensive coordinator. So fast forward, rewind, Cam Cameron was my offensive coordinator with the Chargers. So he had me for 4 years already with the, 3-4 years with the Chargers, and then he went to Miami, and then he was in Baltimore. So they brought me in, and you have to realize, LaRon McClain, you go look at the best years he had. He had over 1,000 yards if you count the playoffs. So Ray Rice and LaRon McClain had over 1,000, blocking for both those guys. So you have to realize that was a year that LaRon made the Pro Bowl because I was leading the way. The guy had 970-some yards in the regular season, and then in playoffs he had over 1,000. So it was a very, very physical year because Joe Flacco was a rookie quarterback. You had a rookie quarterback. We went to the AFC Championship game with the rookie quarterback. So you know how we did that? With a great defense, of course, Ray Lewis and, Ed Reed. But our offense, we led the league in rushing. We were smash mouth, sometimes running about 40, 50 times a game, 45, 40, 38. We were running the ball, and we were a physical team. And so you asked me, was I out of gas? The old fellow was out of gas.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Bill Walsh, the late Bill Walsh, while other people were doing, the Oklahoma drill, he was going through walkthroughs. And when the Niners, the one thing you can say about the Niners under Walsh, when they got to the playoffs, they didn't get there without Jerry. They didn't get there without Joe. They didn't get there without Roger. They didn't have a year where Ronnie wasn't there. They all got to the playoffs, and his talent played. They may have given away a game in September because they, didn't bang heads enough in camp,
right.
But they were ready to roll and peaking physically in December and January when these things are won or lost. Roger Craig. I want to bring up the Roger Craig.
I need Roger Craig.
Roger Craig's greatest season. I mean, you could say 88 because he was the offensive player of the year, I believe, that year. But 87, he goes 1,000, right? And I interviewed him years later, and I asked him about it. I said, Roger, the playoffs, you didn't look like yourself against the New York Giants in the playoffs in 1987. And he said, Krug, I was just cooked. I was done by that point. I had been used so much to get that 1,000 and 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving, and it had never been done before. And, he was on pace for it, and he was, he stayed healthy, he kept himself in great shape, but he just didn't have a lot in the gas tank. Now, I'm not saying that would have elevated, Roger that year. But he just, that was a year where when they got to the playoffs, he just didn't have the same kind of juice as he had in September and October and November and even in December. It was January football, and he was tired.
Yeah.
And so, I think you got to know your team, and you got to know, where they're at physically. I'll give you a guy today, and I tweeted this out coming before I left the house this morning. the one guy. Don't you whoop me?
Yeah, I love it, baby.
The one guy who I really believe Kyle Shanahan has to protect from himself today is Dre Greenlaw. Last week against the Commanders, they did a live mic deal, and they mic'd up Dre Greenlaw. And, man, he was flying around, and you could see the emotional intensity, and he was in guys' face. Chase Young, you're going to bring it today. Nick Bosa, you're going to bring it today. And he was flying around and hitting guys, and he was like, there is no tomorrow. It's all about today. And it was like everything was about the Commander game. The Commander, he's not looking about the playoffs. He's not looking at the Super Bowl. He only knows one speed.
He does.
The guy only knows one speed, and that is full tilt, all out, every play, head knocking, banging heads.
Yeah.
Bring it. He breaks down in space, but he hits you. He hits you like he wants to hurt you. if I'm Steve Wilkes, and I asked Steve Wilkes about it on Thursday, I said, Steve, Greenlaw only knows one speed. Are you going to get him off the field? He's like, that's Kyle Shanahan's call. So it's up to Shanahan. And all I would say is if Shanahan is sitting in his office right now listening to the 95.7 pregame show.
Why wouldn't he?
Why wouldn't he? Kyle, if you're out there, get Dre Greenlaw off the field, because Dre Greenlaw is going to play this thing like it's Super Bowl Sunday. That's the only speed he knows.
Right.
And you got Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, and you got Oren Burks, and you got Jalen Graham sitting there, and you got D. Winters sitting there. Put a couple of those young bucks up today and let them play in the second half especially, and take some of the workload off Greenlaw, because to me, Lo, we're talking about the Niners and whether they can get this thing done. They cannot and will not win this Super Bowl without Dre Greenlaw at full tilt, and that's my biggest concern today. More than anything. I mean, there's other guys as well. Trent Williams is going to play. He's obviously got to stay healthy. George Kittle is going to play, and he's a vitally important guy because the number 2 and number 3 tight ends are nowhere close to Kittle. But Greenlaw and Warner control that whole second level. They patrol the entire second level, and their run D is totally predicated on those two guys being dominant. And to me, this is an opportunity here. If they can get Greenlaw off the field at halftime and go to D. Winters or one of these other guys, I think it's going to bode well for their chances of winning the whole thing.
Oh, I agree with you, because like you alluded to, Greenlaw has one speed, and that's full speed. And he's going to be full tilt, and like you said, he's going to go to a glass. And that's just the way that he goes. He's going to head crack, and that's just the way he runs to the ball. He does all those things. I think Kyle Shanahan understands that, and I don't even know if the guy will play the whole first half. I think that they will pull him. I think you're in a situation where you have to, because you know what he brings to the defense, the tenacity. And yes, of course, Fred Warner, but Fred Warner knows how to play football. Fred Warner, and not that Greenlaw doesn't, but some guys know how to protect themselves and do the things right. Greenlaw's not that gifted athletically to do that. That's why I wish I could have played against a guy like Greenlaw, because I play the game like him. Because
you did. I was going to say that. I was like, he was kind of played like you. I mean, all out, all the time, full contact, stripe on a stripe. Let's go.
That's how you got to play the game. Because I knew that, hey, look, guys more athletic, and they were more faster, and they meant more niftier than me. So I said, okay, if I hit you, though, and if you got to take me on as a man, you got problems. You can't. Somebody got to quit. Somebody can't handle that, because I'm going to go straight down the pipe. I'm going to go right at you, and we're going to go helmet to helmet, ram to ram, and I'm going to twist your line and see if you got a twist in it. And I'm going to check your bloodline to see what it is. And that's how I knew how to play. I would get stingers. I would get, pull them up. Didn't matter. I'm coming at you, and I'm going to make you either try to slip me, or you're going to come on head first, and then guess what? We're going to do it again, and we'll do it again, and somebody's going to quit. And that's how I played the game, because I wasn't no guy that's going to dance around and make guys. No, I didn't have, wasn't my repertoire. And so Greenlaw is like that. That's why he's full speed. He's going to go to a glass, because he knows it's no fair dodging. I'm going to hit you. So Shanahan and them, they know that's who he is. They know that's the kind of player. So I do think that they won't play him the first half.
Yeah, I mean, last year they had Azeez Al-Shaair. Yeah. So they had an extra guy there who, could do it almost as well. You know what I mean? And so they could just be like, Dre, cut loose and let it fly, because we got another guy sitting right here who's not you and not Fred, but man, he ain't a whole lot worse. All right, one of the things that fans are not going to see in this game that is different than every other game is the fact that Kyle Shanahan is going to try to get some guys off the field, but there's an art to it. And I've heard people say, well, they got 16 guys in the practice squad, just call those 16 guys up and
do it.
And this isn't the preseason. In the preseason, the last preseason game, you can say, hey, all you regulars, go get a dip and put on some sweats.
Right.
Because we got a 90-man roster and we're rolling everybody out there.
Right.
You can't do that. You only have so many guys up on game day. They can only call 2 guys off the practice squad. Taylor Hawkins and Jeremy McNichols are those 2 guys. So even though they got a 16-man practice squad, and I wish they would change this rule.
For the playoffs, I think they should.
Well, I would love to see it. If you clinch, and you're a team like the 49ers, you've clinched.
Number 1 seed.
The reward should be that you can pull as many of your practice squad guys up as you want in week 18 and use your depth because you clinched. That should be the benefit of having clinched. But they haven't changed those rules. And so everybody, there's going to be starters that have to play. This is where this game is different than other games. And I got to get your thoughts on it, because have you ever been in a game where they called off the dogs, you pulled off your tape, and all of a sudden, now you got to go back in the game? Because this is where players can get hurt. This is the challenge that Kyle Shanahan is going to have today. If you're sitting at this game, you're watching this game on the TV, Kyle Shanahan has to decide, how far does he go? He wants to win the game for momentum, but not really. The Ravens just lost to the Steelers yesterday. It's not about the W. It's about looking sharp, playing well, keeping guys healthy. But he can't just say, hey, I'm pulling everybody at half, because he's only got so many backups. And what if his backups get hurt in the mid-third quarter? And now he's got to go back to Trent Williams or Aaron Banks or Dre Greenlaw or Fred Warner. Hey, I know you pulled off your tape. I know you're sitting there on the sidelines yucking it up with your teammates. Retape, get back in there, and let's make it happen for 20 more plays. That's how guys get seriously hurt. This is a huge challenge today for Kyle Shanahan to go he wants to get his guys a blow, but he can't pull these veterans back off the bench and throw them in the fourth. Otherwise, he's risking major injury. Have you ever been in that spot where you were out, you were told you were out, and now you got to go again?
Absolutely. I was playing a game, and I was with the Chargers, and I remember, I don't know if it was preseason or early in the season, we're beating a team by 20 or 30, whatever, and I remember cutting the tape off, and they're like, all right, cool. And I told one of the trainers, go grab my, my turf shoes, but they're still high, and we play on grass. So I stick them on, and then it's in the game, and they're just going to go, they scored, and they want to go hands. And Rashay, Caldwell, rest in peace,
Former Gator wide receiver.
Yeah, and he was a hands team, but he was out or injured or something. So I had to run in there. I had no tape on my hands. I usually spat my ankles, no tape. So I go in, onside kick. I'm like, oh, my God, I'm in bad shoes and everything. So, yes, I had to go back in. And the ball comes right there. The guy's right there. The ball's dribbling around. The other team's trying to recover. I jump in there. I see the ball. I jump in. I pull it out. I come out with the ball. The fumble recovery.
Look at you.
Ask David. Dr. Chow. Dr. Charge. You got to ask him that, because he tells that story. I'm like, I'm all eating up. I'm all already done for the day. And it might have been preseason. And friggin', I go back in. So, yeah, you do have to be careful. But I remember that like yesterday. Going in there, onside kick. I recovered. I'm down there physically just stealing the ball down there. But absolutely, Kyle Shanahan has to be aware of that today, without a doubt, because you can get guys injured, especially if guys are cool. So I think that Kyle Shanahan's message is, guys, look, I'm going to try to take care of you, but you got to stay mentally in the game, because you never know what's going to happen.
All right, we're going to take a timeout. We're going to come back with more coming up next. Who is the biggest threat to the 49ers in the NFC and in the league across the AFC as well? Jake Hutchinson is going to join us. He's the senior digital sports content producer for Odyssey Sports. He's here, boots on the ground. We'll get Jake's perspective on this matchup as we get you closer to the Niners and the Rams. It's Week 18, beautiful day for football, crisp, clear, and cool, and they're getting it on at Levi's, and we're bringing you right to kickoff on 95.7 The Game.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot.
PurdyGuy.com. And with us on the line is 95.7 The Game senior digital sports content producer, the great Jake Hutchinson in the house. Jake, thank you for your time this morning, my man, or this afternoon as we cross noon here. And we were just talking a little bit about teasing going into the last break. Who's the biggest threat to the 49ers? And Bill Barnwell, I thought, did a phenomenal article this week kind of breaking down the weaknesses of every team in the playoff picture. And every team's got a weakness. And the more I look at the NFC, the more I think the Rams that we're going to see today might be the number one team that I fear in the NFC as far as the Niners are concerned. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic because, when you really look at the NFC, there's no team that the 49ers should actually fear that much. I mean, it's the playoffs, right? So you're going to take every team extraordinarily seriously, but they're clearly the crop of the NFC. The Philadelphia Eagles are folding like a lawn chair, regardless of how good, the Dallas Cowboys look from game to game. No one believes they're for real until they prove us otherwise. Like any team with, Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott, I cannot take seriously until they, again, show that they're for real. For me, I think the Detroit Lions, who just lost Sam Laporta, would probably have been that team. But, Laporta is so valuable to them that, if he's out and he got carted off with a knee injury,
I don't see that. Is that happened today?
Yeah, he got carted off the field in the game today, I think less than an hour ago with a knee injury. And he is a top 5 tight end in the league right now. And as a rookie,
no question.
Massive to their team. So I kind of think you're right. The Rams are not the most well-rounded team. But, when you go into these games, you're sort of doing a vibe check, and the Rams have, sort of the vibes of we could upset you. They have enough talent, and it's really 5 guys, right? It's Stafford, Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, and Aaron Donald, and I guess a little bit Ernest Jones. But they don't, it's just really good coaching from Raheem Morris and Sean McVay, and they have just enough, spice where you're these guys could pull off an upset, and they know the 49ers so well that. If they were to get their run game going and turn it into a game that makes the 49ers uncomfortable and keep the 49ers offense off the field, Aaron Donald gets some pressure. There's a blueprint there. So I don't think the Rams are by far the best team the 49ers would face, but I kind of think you're right. They could be, the one that could upset them.
When you look at the Niners, you think about what they've accomplished thus far this year. What concerns you when you talk about just the injury perspective? Is it health versus anything else that makes this team that you would say, if this team is healthy and it plays, is that the biggest concern that you have for this opposition for this team?
Yeah, I think health is the only thing that can prevent this team from at least making it to the Super Bowl. I thought this team from the start, I predicted this team would make a Super Bowl run and win it this year. And I still firmly believe that. And, the only thing I think that could change that is injuries, which is why, throwing Trent Williams out there today, if they indeed follow through on that, which it sounds like they're going to do, and probably Debo and Ayuk is a little bit head scratching. I think the reasoning for that is probably it's sort of the same thing as if Purdy were to get injured, I think they want Sam Darnold to have an actual series at least with Trent Williams and some of the starters to get a feel for it. Because if Purdy goes down, I think they're going to want Darnold to feel comfortable, and he hasn't had that. So while I don't necessarily agree with, Shanahan putting Trent Williams out there, it's hard, it's hard for me to wrap my head around. I think that would be the logic in doing it, is to get Darnold reps with the ones, even if it's just one series. But for me, I think it's injuries. And the only way this team loses is, if they turn the ball over, the offense can't stay on the field, and it ends up being a Ravens situation. But I have a hard time seeing that happening again.
Follow up with that. When you talk about, this is just a preview to say, let's get Darnold some reps with the ones. Can you see any reason besides maybe injury? Could you see that, hey, look, if Purdy struggles, or if Is this that thing to say, look, let's see what this guy really does have, so I feel comfortable if I need to throw him in there for a series to talk to Purdy? Is this what you think this is more for?
Yeah, I think it's reps for him. And to be honest, there could be an element of, Darnold, he took less money to come here. He has been, Purdy praised him the other day. There could be a minor element of, hey, let's do right by this guy and actually give him a series with the 49ers starters so he can put some tape on before he hits free agency and leaves. I don't think that is the main reason they're doing it, but I do think the 49ers have a history of, when they have backup quarterbacks who stick around and could have, maybe gone elsewhere. This could be a little bit of trying to do right by Darnold, but, the main reason I think is just if he ends up in a playoff game, you want him to feel comfortable with his cadence, with the feel of those guys in the huddle, and for those guys to have that same feel. So from that perspective, I think Kyle Shanahan's thinking, okay, yes, guys could get injured on a series or two, but, if Purdy gets hurt, the risks, of, those injuries versus the reward of having Darnold feel comfortable outweighs them. I don't necessarily agree, but I think that's what Kyle Shanahan's thinking.
Jake, let's talk more about Darnold for a second. He's a hard worker. I heard John Lynch say, he gets to the facility at 6 a.m. and Darnold is right there, showing up early and leaving late, and that's always something you love to see. This guy easily could have gone somewhere else and made more money this year, and he opted to come here probably to get that. I'm sure he thought there was a very good chance that Brock Purdy was not going to be healthy and that he was going to get some starts, and it really hasn't happened that way. He's 21-34 career. Is Darnold auditioning for other teams today to some degree? And do you think they give him all 4 quarters, or do you think, seeing how last year ended in Philadelphia, that they may want to throw Brandon Allen in the 4th quarter out there?
Yeah, I would suspect that Darnold plays almost the entire game until the result is sort of out of the question, because it's something where, I guess if Brandon Allen were to get hurt, you'd feel okay putting him back in. But given the fact that they inactivated Purdy, I think they're going to let Darnold go as long as they can and into the 4th quarter. Ideally you'd want to let Brandon Allen get some reps too, but I think this is a situation where, one, yes, it is an audition for Darnold, and it's to get him comfortable on the field with his scheme and extended playing time. I really think that's part of it, is that they know it's an audition for him, and they want him to feel as comfortable as they can going into the playoffs.
When you say audition, is this a foregone conclusion that Darnold will not be returning? You think are they going to throw a couple bucks at him to have that backup because if something happens, how important it is to have a backup? Is that something you think that they're looking to try, or is this just a foregone conclusion that he will hit the market next year?
Yeah, I think it's that they probably will be priced out of re-signing him. I think if he is available for a similar price range, say $5 to $7 million, I think they'd probably want to keep him around. But I have a hard time believing that Darnold is, because it's something where you can take a pay cut once to be the good guy, right? But if you keep doing that,
you ruin yourself, right? How is exactly. I'm jumping in. We're just kind of go back and forth. What if I say, who's out there that's going to give this guy a starting job? When you look at his performance as a start, what gives you hope, or what makes you think that the market's going to say, hey, look, with the guys that are in the draft and the guys like Russell Wilson and different guys that may be on the market, what makes you think that this guy is going to get a starting type of quarterback or type of money?
I think, I don't know if he'll get, when I talk about being priced out, I don't necessarily think he's going to get a major deal, like,
sure.
Even $15 million. But something like $10 million would probably price the 49ers out of that. And there's teams, like, say if the Bears move on from Justin Fields and they want to draft a quarterback, not necessarily the Bears, but a team like that.
I get you.
Out there like the Patriots, that might say, all right, let's throw $10 million at Sam Darnold and let's draft a rookie and see how it goes in camp. And if the rookie plays better than him, then we have an excellent backup. And if Darnold plays well, then we have a guy who's kind of interesting. So that's sort of a situation where I see him falling into.
It is interesting. It's like you're only as good in
Right.
radio. They say you're only as good as your last show. In the NFL, you're only as good as your last game. I know he's turned the ball over a ton since he's been in the NFL. But let's say he comes out today and looks sharp and throws for 340 yards and 3 touchdowns, and the 49ers win big. And this is the lasting memory that NFL general managers have of Darnold. I absolutely think that's going to translate to dollars in the offseason from some needy team. Just when you look at how many teams there are that typically need quarterbacks and the scarcity of quarterbacks. Let's talk about Brandon Ayuk. Niners had 9 Pro Bowlers. He wasn't one of them. Why do you think Ayuk wasn't rewarded with the Pro Bowl nod? He's been phenomenal. And, I know Puka Nakua's got, 1,400 yards, but he's got it on like 150 targets. Ayuk's got like 1,300 and change on like 97 targets. He's got almost more than a third less targets than Puka, who made the Pro Bowl. And he's been more efficient, and he's obviously on a team with tremendous weapons. Why do you think at the core that Ayuk missed the Pro Bowl nod?
Yeah, one, Ayuk is the most efficient receiver in the NFL this season, and if he was in a Cowboys situation, I bet you he'd have more yards than CeeDee Lamb. I think he is an incredibly well-rounded receiver, arguably like the most well-rounded receiver in the NFL. That's really high praise, but what he does as a blocker is unbelievable. He sprang Christian McCaffrey a few times this season, whether it turned into a touchdown or not. He created so many extra yards. But the reason I think he didn't make the Pro Bowl is he's the least well-known out of the group, right? The Pro Bowl is a joke in some respects. It's
Agreed.
A popularity contest that doesn't accurately reflect talent. I think he should get all-pro consideration. I'm not sure if he will. Depends on, whether some writers are aware of how to actually evaluate, what receivers are doing versus just looking at numbers. But I think it's because people know that there's George Kittle, there's Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel, and they're like, really? We're going to take another guy when there's CeeDee Lamb and Nakua and all these other guys out there? Actually, yes, you should. Like, Ayuk has genuinely been a top 10 receiver in the league. You look at separation metrics, you look at basically how he runs his routes, everything. He is elite in every single aspect of his game, and I think part of it is like he's an understated guy, right? Like, he's not a guy that's going to come and sort of, talk his game a ton. He's pretty humble. He's low key. He stays under the radar. He just does his job. And I think it's something where it could potentially hurt him in terms of accolades in his career with all these other guys around him. And I think it's just that. If they had one fewer guy, if they didn't have a Deebo, if they didn't have a Kittle or McCaffrey, he would be a Pro Bowler right now. But, if they win a chip this year, I think he's going to be feeling okay about his bargaining power, when he looks for a deal coming up.
I know the idea of trading Ayuk is heresy to 49er fans, but we've seen it a lot in recent years where star wide receivers, instead of getting the bag, get traded. A.J. Brown, D-Hop. I was reading articles this week about the upcoming offseason, and there's a lot of speculation that Devontae Adams could get dealt, that Stephon Diggs could get dealt from Buffalo. And I saw Bleacher Report articles saying that maybe Ayuk could be dealt to Jacksonville for a 2024 first and a 2025 third. What do you think? I would rather pay Ayuk than pay any other of their free agents, including Chase Young. Are you confident the Niners are going to pay him, or do you think there's a possibility they would be open-minded if somebody came with 2 number ones that they would pull the trigger on moving him?
I would be pretty surprised if they dealt him. I think the Niners have a track record of the top-tier guys, and if they don't view Ayuk as a top-tier guy, that would stun me because he is. He produces in every single way, as I mentioned before. They have a history of paying their top-tier guys, and, his money wouldn't kick in right away. It's the same thing. They still benefit from Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy has another 2 years of his rookie deal, and, he'll negotiate that going into his 4th year. But they still have the benefit of that, where to trade Ayuk, especially if you win a Super Bowl or competing for it, and he's one of the guys who's younger, who's on an ascending trajectory, who sort of fits the next wave of the timeline. I would be stunned if they were to deal him. So while, you could get a first and a third round pick, the 49ers whiff in the third round every single year.
Sure.
Like every single year, aside from Fred Warner. So, like, that doesn't really matter to me. In a first-round pick, it's like you could end up with a Javon Kinlaw. So, to me, I don't see the value in trading him. His money wouldn't hit right away, and they do have a lot of restructuring power with a lot of their veteran contracts and can create a lot of space if they need it. So I think they'd rather let a guy like Chase Young walk and re-sign Ayuk, especially with Brock Purdy and the connection he has with him and what they've done with the deep ball, you know, and an element of this offense that has never existed before.
Right.
I would be really, really shocked.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that you go that route. When you think about, you know, you talk about Brandon Ayuk, and everyone's, Larry, in the same church, and you guys are saying the same thing about just Purdy, 2 years, still some years on his rookie deal because of where he is. If he wins a Super Bowl this year, well, not he, but if the team wins a Super Bowl collectively, where can he go? I mean, can he put up enough numbers if he has a similar or worse year? Do you rip it? Do you have to think about the contract this year, or do you think that this, no matter what, that they're going to make him play at least one more year of this deal?
Yeah, I think going into that fourth year is going to be when the negotiations are, and there's going to be talks this offseason about what sort of numbers his team is already looking for. But, yeah, with 2 years left on his rookie deal, the 49ers, I think, are just going to, like, if he wants to sit out and make no money, like, which, again, he's not making much, like,
right.
I think he's going to have to just sit and take, again, a really cheap year. And I think, obviously, the 49ers, if he stays healthy next year and he plays, you know, similar to how he did this year, they will do right by him and they will pay him. I mean, consider what they paid Jimmy Garoppolo, and he was just average at best, sometimes good. I think they would pay Purdy going into that fourth year on an extension, and that would be the time if he's going to hold out. But, yeah, his team is obviously going to be in discussions with them about what sort of numbers he's looking for.
Jake Hutchinson with us as we break down the 49ers, getting you ready for the Niners and the Rams on 95.7 The Game. All right, let's talk about Eric Armstead. Armstead's been out a month. Lynch talked this week that he hopes he returns for the playoffs. He has plantar fasciitis and a knee issue. I've been told that the foot issue is more severe than the knee, and anybody who's had plantar fasciitis knows it doesn't go away. It's just kind of one of those things that lingers. As I said, he's been out a month. He's been injured since week 13. And during this 4-game stretch, the 49er defense ranks 23rd in EPA per play against the run. They're 26 against the run. They're 26th in EPA per play. His production in the playoffs over his career is awesome. He's got 7 sacks, 11 quarterback hits, and 5 TFLs in 9 games. So they got to have big Eric Armstead. To me, he's an essential piece. Jake, what are you hearing about Armstead? If this were the Super Bowl, could he go today? How severe is this plantar fasciitis issue?
Yeah, it's something where it's like the bigger you are, the worse it is, right? It's something where NBA players who dealt with it sidelines them for months, and it's something where they come back and then sometimes they get sidelined again, and it's a really finicky thing. And Mooney Ward has been dealing with that too this season. But, again, it's something that it can last like a week, and you can work on it, and it's so painful. Anyone that's felt it, I had it this year, and it is brutal, where you just feel this searing pain at the bottom of your foot, and it feels like you can't even walk. So I think for Armstead, he's talked about he thinks he's going to be back for the playoffs. I think that's something where if it's brutally painful, he might not play in that first playoff game, but I'd be stunned if he were to miss the playoffs completely. I think it's just something where take some painkillers or whatever it takes. It's the playoffs. Get through it. But it is brutal. And being as tall as he is and carrying as much weight, it's a really, really painful injury. So it's not something to just, ignore and say play through it. But once it comes to the playoffs, it's time, and they really do need him because Javon Kinlaw cannot play the run. And without Armstead, they just get gashed in that respect. And they look not teethless, but they really, really struggle without him.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. You need Armstead, especially if you want to go make that run and get to where you want to go. If you're going to have to see them Ravens again in the run game. When you think about today, what are you looking for today when a game that doesn't mean anything pretty much for neither team, a lot of the starters aren't playing? Is there something that you look for as a takeaway in this game today, or is there particular players that you're looking to see?
Yeah.
How's that looking to you?
Yeah, I think for the 49ers, obviously you evaluate all the offensive line guys, so you know what the rotation looks like if someone goes down, if there's someone that actually plays well and you feel like, okay, if we have an injury in the playoffs, we can trust this guy. But for me, obviously you look at Sam Darnold, see how he plays, just because that'll be interesting if Purdy goes down or go into the offseason. But the two guys I'm really interested in are tight end Braden Willis and cornerback Darrell Luter, because Willis is a guy I really liked in the preseason. I think he's got clearly more talent than Charlie Warner or Ross Dwelly. And he outplayed Cam Latu, who just disappeared and, had an injury that, sidelined him for this year. But I thought he showed a lot of promise. I think he might honestly play some fullback today. He was a guy who in college kind of played everywhere. So that would be cool just to see him play fullback. See what he's capable of in the passing game, because his receiving chops are really intriguing to me. And then Luter is a guy where he's going to be the first up if there's any injury to one of their corners. And they talked super highly about him. They were praising him before the season when he got hurt. They like what they saw in OTAs out of him. And then he had a knee injury. But, the amount of praise for a guy who really hasn't seen the field has been stunning. So I'm really intrigued to see him get a full run today and just what he can do.
Jake, great stuff. Quick stat on the way out. When Debo and Christian McCaffrey start, the 49ers are 20-3. I think there's going to be a couple of guys that Shanahan is going to get off the field early in this game. And if he asks me for my vote, obviously CMC's already not playing. I'd vote for Debo on offense and Greenlaw on defense. What do you think? If I gave you that choice, you can have two guys that you take off the field, let's say at halftime, and don't bring back no matter what. Who you taking off the field?
Yeah, my number one is Trent Williams. I really, again, don't think he should play at all, and I think they'll get him out pretty quick. But, yeah, after that, I'm with you. I don't think Warner's going to play, even though he said it, or maybe he plays a series. But, yeah, Dre Greenlaw he's such a crucial part of that defense, and he is fairly injury-prone. I would get him out pretty quick. And the same thing with Debo. The numbers you mentioned about them winning with Christian McCaffrey, they don't win without Debo. The numbers, I don't have the exact record with me, but if you look up their record with and without Debo, it is astounding. He is such a crucial part of this team, even when his numbers aren't there. So, yeah, I'd get him out of there quick.
Great stuff, Jake. Thanks for the time. Appreciate you.
No worries. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Jake Hutchinson stopping by, giving us some of the breakdown. All right, we'll take a timeout, our final timeout. Up next, the 5 keys to success today and my 5 keys to success in the playoffs. I'll throw those to Lowe and get his feedback next as we get you ready for the Niners and the Rams on 95.7 The Game.
At Merrill West Credit Union, we're working towards a brighter financial future for both our members and our community, knowing that when you succeed, we all succeed. Let's get acquainted with our premier savings for new members, now paying over 20 times the national average.
Now back to the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game.
And welcome back to the Kickoff Show as we start our final segment. Larry Krueger and Lo Neal getting you ready. Niners and Rams. And, of course, the Kickoff Show presented by Habas Law. You've been wronged. Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURED or visit their website, habaslaw.com. And make sure, normally I'd say tune in to 95.7 for the post-game show, but tonight we've got the Warriors and the Raptors on 95.7 The Game, so we won't have a 49er post-game show. Let's run down some scores from around Week 18. Bengals are destroying the Browns. Browns obviously are going to the playoffs, and the Bengals 31-0.
Wow.
Over the Browns with 9 minutes to play in the fourth quarter.
That's crazy.
Lions beating the Vikings 27-20. Titans over the Jaguars. It's 28-20 with almost the 2-minute warning.
Steelers have got to be happy about that, right?
Yeah, Steelers. Well, Steelers I think got the win with them yesterday over the Ravens.
No. The Steelers needed either the Jags to lose or the Bills to lose to get in. If the Bills win and the Jags win, they're home. I think that's the scenario.
Yeah, the Steelers will clinch a playoff berth with a Bills loss or a Jaguars loss or tie.
Yes.
So, yeah. So that's what that shakes out at. Jets and Patriots 6-3 in a game that, man, nobody wants to watch. And that's probably going to be the end of the Bill Belichick era. There's a lot of talk that the Raiders and the Commanders and the there's a number of teams that maybe are going to go after Belichick. I don't know if Belichick's going to coach or not, but 6-3 in that one. Jets on top of the Patriots. Robert Saleh, by the way, is coming back to New York next year, but they're going to shop the quarterback, the former number 2 pick, Zach Wilson.
What do you think happens there? Do you think Saleh goes after because he was with the Niners so long and he saw a guy by the name of Russell Wilson? Well, but I know they got Aaron Rodgers. So how do you look at a guy like Russell? Because what's going on in Denver? I thought the way that he played shouldn't have been benched, but I know it's a money thing. Do you think this guy's going to get a gig?
Well, it's a great question because, there's also a rumor out today that Sean Payton, the head coach of the Broncos, will have the determining factor on whether or not George Payton, the general manager there in Denver, returns. So It sounds like Payton is pulling all the strings and has all the power, and he probably wants to part ways with Payton and with Russell, but that's going to be, prohibitive cost-wise, I would imagine, to get out from underneath Russell's deal. I don't know. I'm not sure who, I could see Russell being attractive to a number of teams. The New York Giants, I know, have always liked Russell Wilson.
Bad deal they gave Daniel Jones. How do you? And that's what I was asking.
But they also have DeVito now too.
I keep DeVito. You got to keep him for the fans' sake. You make him a backup, but
Daniel, Russell and DeVito and trade Danny Dimes, or maybe he's a free agent.
I think you try to trade him because you just gave him that money, and that's the thing with me when I'm looking at a guy like Sam Darnold today, kind of the transition. I know we got to get through those scores, but how does that? Do you see what I'm saying? If you go out and play a guy like this, is now do you look at what you have in the Niners? Do you think he's going to get that type of deal?
Well, it's a very fluid situation. If Sam Darnold plays terrible today and throws 3 interceptions, he's probably a career backup. I mean, there's a lot. This might as well be Super Bowl Sunday for Sam Darnold and for Carson Wentz. I mean, they're both a lot on the line tonight for sure. I mean, if Darnold throws for 375 and 3 touchdowns, he might be the hot name quarterback-wise this offseason as far as veterans. So there's a lot on the line today for Sam Darnold for sure. Saints have a 41-17 lead against the Falcons.
Wow.
Now, the Saints will clinch a playoff berth with a win, a Seahawk win or tie, a Packer loss or tie. So it looks like the Saints are going to the playoffs. And then this afternoon, Bears and Packers.
Ooh.
That one, I think the Packers, if you look at their situation, they clinch a playoff berth if they win and Seahawks lose or the Saints lose. So the Saints aren't going to lose, and the Seahawks play against the Cardinals in Arizona. So if the Packers beat the Bears at Lambeau today and get a little help, I would imagine the Packers are going to win that game.
I like the Chicago.
Do you?
I think if Justin Fields, this is it. He's auditioning, like you just talked about Sam Darnold.
And Eberflus is coming back, but they're not sure about Justin Fields.
Right.
They may trade him. They may go with him.
Yeah.
Broncos, Raiders, that's later today as well. And Eagles, Giants goes later today. Eagles, of course, are already in. Seahawks, Cardinals in the desert. Chiefs, Chargers down at SoFi.
Yeah.
Of course, the game here at Levi's, Rams and Niners. And then Cowboys, Commanders. This is the end of the road for Ron Rivera, but it may also be the end of the road for Mike McCarthy. If you believe the reports, if Dallas doesn't have an extended playoff run, Jerry Jones could pull the plug on Mike McCarthy.
Really?
That's
Number two seed pulling the plug on?
They could. And there's a lot of talk that they want to throw a bucket load of cash at Jim Harbaugh. They've had Cowboys. Who knows? Maybe they'll go to Bill Belichick.
Is Jimmy going to stay? Is Harbaugh staying in college? I know they offered him $120 million. You think he's gone? If he wins tomorrow night, or
win or lose? I think
he's not winning tomorrow.
I think he's gone. No, I don't either. I like the UW Huskies,
and that's the guy that no one's talking about. Coach Kellen DeBoer. Let me tell you about
he's
Kellen.
He's a good coach.
Look what he's done at Fresno State. Win, built the program. Look what he did at Washington. Win. Look at him when he's at the small school, and he's a leader of men. I think this is a guy that guys are underestimating. I think other colleges should be looking at him. I think the NFL should be looking. I know the guy personally.
Do you?
And I'm gonna tell you, I think this guy can win in the pros. He knows how to build programs, and I like what he brings to the table. Look what he's got with this quarterback. This guy's rising off the chart. Look how he executes offense. I like Kellen DeBoer a lot.
I do too. And I've seen him do a number of interviews, and he's very grounded. He always defers the success to the players. He doesn't try to hog the spotlight. He's very, very bright guy, tough guy, smart. And then, of course, tonight, Sunday Night Football, going to be one of the best games of the year, you would think. Bills and Dolphins.
Ooh!
The Dolphins have already clinched the AFC East Division title. They will with a win, I should say. But Buffalo clinches the AFC East Division title with a win. Buffalo also clinches a playoff berth with a tie, a win, or a tie and a Jaguars loss or tie. So
Buffalo can go from being the number 2 seed in the AFC all the way down to out of the playoffs?
They can be out of the playoffs if Jacksonville won today. Now, Jacksonville's losing 28-20. So the Bills get in to a playoff berth if the Jacksonville Jaguars lose that game. But the Bills, if they win the game, also win the AFC East.
That's what's crazy.
Buffalo's playing well.
They can go from being out of the playoffs if Jags win, and if they lost, they go but they would still have the second best record the third best record in the AFC and still be out of the playoffs. Isn't that crazy?
Oh, what a weird year for Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo lost to Denver. They lost to the Jets.
Yeah. I agree.
Buffalo's really struggled this year. They've had some really ugly games. They fired Ken Dorsey. But since the bye week, they've taken off. And in a lot of ways, they may be kind of – if you told me that it was Niners-Buffalo in Vegas on Super Bowl Sunday, I wouldn't be shocked by that.
No, we're not. I think the Buffalo Bills, believe it or not, I think Buffalo Bills is going to be – I think it's going to be them and the Baltimore Ravens because Buffalo's going to be the number 2 seed after today. Miami's lost too many guys. Miami's just doesn't have it. I think that the Buffalo Bills and the Ravens are going to play in the AFC Championship. I'm more sure of that as the AFC Championship than pretty much than the NFC Championship. I think the NFC, you don't know what's the Dallas, so you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know about Detroit. You don't know if the Rams going to upset anyone. But I think if you look at the 2 AFC teams, I think that right now, I don't have any confidence in Kansas City. I know Mahomes is good, but I'm telling you right now, with the inability at the receivers for guys to catching balls and guys are dropping passes, I do not believe the Kansas City Chiefs maybe even win a game. That's how bad I think the Kansas City is. I don't believe that it's going to be Buffalo and the Ravens, and I think the Niners, and I don't know.
Well, the thing about Kansas City is their weapons are not that strong.
No.
Their receivers are really bad. Their offense has struggled, and they're going to have to do something that they've never done before with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and that's go on the road. It's people don't realize what a house of horrors it is to play in the playoffs at Arrowhead. The Chiefs have had that major league advantage for years now. They're going to have to venture out on the road and get it done. Totally different deal. There is one final today as well. The Buccaneers have beaten the Panthers. So the Buccaneers clinched the NFC South Division title with a win.
Okay.
And then,
the Saints still get in, though.
Well, they clinch a playoff berth with a win. and then or a tie and a Seahawk loss and a Packer loss.
Ooh, they need help.
They need help as far as to clinch a playoff berth if they tied. But if they win, they clinch a playoff berth and the division title. So
okay, one more time. The Bills are Tampa's already in.
Tampa's in.
Tampa won the division.
Right. Tampa won today, and I think because they won today, I think they win the division.
Okay.
But the Saints clinch a playoff berth with a win, and then a Seahawk win over the Cardinals, or a tie, or a Packers loss to the Bears, or a tie. A Seahawks loss or a Packers loss. I mean, it's just,
that's crazy. I'm confused.
There's a lot going
Larry,
on.
you just confused me even more. You're like, no,
there's a lot
the Saints aren't in for sure. So the
Saints are definitely not in for sure.
Okay, that's all.
The Buccaneers are in for sure.
Okay.
Steelers won yesterday 17-10 over the Ravens. Ravens didn't need that. They're the number one seed. The Steelers, their situation we already mentioned before.
Tennessee won, so they're in. Tennessee's going to beat Jacksonville, looks like.
Steelers clinched a playoff berth with a Bills loss tonight or a Jaguar loss or tie. So
and you said Jacksonville's losing.
Jacksonville is losing 28-20.
Much time left now?
3:15 left in the fourth quarter. So it looks like, the Steelers are going to be in. Mike Tomlin. And by the way, and then the Texans, by the way, beat the Colts. Minshew, the final play, he threw it to a guy who had six receptions all year. But you know what? I forget the guy's name. Goodyear or whatever, the young running back who dropped the ball.
Yeah.
And he should have caught it. And
threw it behind him
and
a little
Minshew
bit.
should have thrown a better ball. But I blame Jonathan Taylor. Go back to second down and third down. Jonathan Taylor is a 220-pound back. Lo, you were as physical as any back in the league. They need a first down. The season's on the line.
Yeah.
He ran out of bounds untouched. You got to take that up the field and maybe break a tackle and get that first down. You got to get it done on second down. You don't leave it to third down, and you don't leave it to fourth down.
Agreed.
I mean, it was weird watching that. It was like the Colts were playing for fourth down.
Yeah,
I didn't like the way that looked there.
They did not convert one time on third down last night. How about that?
They don't deserve to move on.
They didn't deserve to move on.
Yeah, and C.J. Stroud.
Absolutely right.
C.J. Stroud was fantastic yesterday. Really fantastic. All right, in our final minutes here, I want to talk a little bit about the keys to success for today's game and the keys for success in the playoffs. And to me, in today's game, okay, the one thing that is absolutely impressive is that the Rams were in a rebuilding mode, and they're going to make the playoffs in their rebuilding year. McVay's a very good coach. Les needs a very good GM. But to me, as far as what is going to define success for the 49ers today, number one, avoid serious injury. That's number one. Absolutely number one. Number two, don't give away any secrets. Have a very vanilla plan. I expect a very vanilla game plan with lots of running from both sides. Why? Because the Niners could very easily play this Rams team in 3 weeks.
Agreed. Hey,
I think the Rams are going to upset whoever they have in the first round, whether it's Dallas or Detroit. I think McVay, especially if it's Dallas, I like the Rams to beat the Cowboys. Willard and I had Jason Lockenfora on Willard and Dibbs when I was sitting in for Dibbs a couple weeks ago. Lockenfora said if it gets down to Rams Cowboys, that he likes the Rams to pull the upset, and I do as well.
Right, and that's because the Rams, when you look at the Rams and look at what they're doing, they're a split image of the 49ers. They run the ball and they have a quarterback. When you think, and they play decent defense, if you think about what it takes in this league to be successful, if you can run the ball and play decent defense, you can win ball games. You look at the Niners in their heyday when they had Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson was not Russell Wilson, but when you look at the Niners when they're playing good football, you had Jimmy G as quarterback, but what were you able to do well? Run the ball and play good defense.
Kyron Williams is really underrated.
Absolutely.
Terrific back. And the Rams have big-time weapons. I mean, think about it.
They do.
Stafford's won a Super Bowl. Kyron's been one of the best backs in the league. Puka Nacua,
maybe
by the way,
rookie of the year, right?
29 yards to have the all-time rookie receiving yardage record. That's on the line in the first half today. And then you've got Cooper Kupp, and you've got, Demarcus Robinson, and they've got Tutu Atwell, and they got Tyler Higbee. I mean, they got Steve Avila on their offensive line. Their O-line's been better than You think?
Yeah.
So they played
the Niners,
Donald.
and they played the Niners close the first game. It was just that one turnover. You remember, it was
anybody's game.
Yeah, exactly.
It's absolutely anybody's game.
And they are playing a physical type of brand of football, and they got a quarterback. When you look at the quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, he's still consistent. He understands how to get the ball out of his hand, and the system works for that quarterback and for what they're doing. So I'm with you. I think this Ram team, they were cap heavy. They were heavy cap heavy. They were way over the cap, and look what they did. They trimmed the fat, but they still were able to compete. And they, like you said, this was a rebuilding year.
If they go into the draft in the offseason and they get some defensive help next year, watch out for them. In fact, at the beginning of the year and most of the year, I would say that I thought Seattle was going to be the team over the next 5 to 6 years that contends with the Niners. I've amended that opinion. I've evolved in that opinion. I think it's going to be the Rams. I think it's going to be Rams, even though Stafford's older and they don't have their quarterback of the future on the roster necessarily. I just have more faith in the regime of McVay and Snead than I do of Gannon and in Arizona and obviously of Carroll and Schneider in Seattle. I think the Rams and the Niners are the matchup in the division going forward. But as far as today, keys to success: avoid injuries. Don't give away any trade secrets. Play a very vanilla game. Win the game. If you can win the game, keep that positive momentum going. And then, let's see if Sam Darnold can avoid turnovers. The guy's got 56 career picks and 36 career fumbles in 65 NFL games. I mean, that's a boatload of turnovers. That's a big one. And then I'm really excited to see some of the young players today.
Me too.
Elijah Mitchell. I want to see a lot of Jordan Mason.
I want to see a lot of Mason. Yep.
Robert Beal, D. Winters, Jalen Graham, Sammy Womack, Darrell Luter, Braden Willis, Taylor Hawkins. The Niners have a really deep roster with a lot of good young talents. A lot of those guys haven't played hardly at all this year. That's what I want to see today. And then as far as my 5 keys to success in the playoffs, tell me what you think of these. Brock Purdy has to avoid interceptions. He's got 9 interceptions in the Niners' 4 losses. He takes great care of the football. He doesn't turn it over a lot. He only has 11 interceptions on the year. But to me, if there's one common denominator of these Niner losses, it's that Brock Purdy's thrown 9 picks. Yeah. So Brock Purdy's got to take care of the football if the Niners are going to have success in the playoffs. You got to have a healthy Dre Greenlaw on that second level. You got to have a healthy Eric Armstead on that defensive front. And then there are 5 young 49er defensive backs. We didn't even mention it really, but Jason Verrett, he fell at practice, landed on his shoulder, now needs rotator cuff surgery. Guy's had 2 ACLs, 2 Achilles injuries. He's had a labrum injury and now a rotator cuff. His career is probably over. But the Niners have 5 young DBs that all have a lot of talent. Jair Brown, who won't play today with the knee sprain. Demo Lenore, who's coming into his own. Ambry Thomas, who's been, I think, one of the revelations of this season. And then Samuel Womack and Darrell Luter Jr. Those 5 young DBs have to play with poise, and they got to play. They got to make plays for the Niners to win the Super Bowl. The Niner O-line has to avoid penalties and play well. And then CMC, Debo, and Ayuk, the 3 guys that look great in training camp. Those guys need to touch the ball a lot. When the Niners lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, Debo had huge first half. Yeah. He was the betting favorite to win the MVP at halftime. He got 2 touches in the second half. If the Niners are going to win the Super Bowl, Debo, CMC, and Ayuk have to be healthy. Debo, CMC, and Ayuk have to touch the football. Those are my 5 keys to winning a championship for the Niners.
Yeah, mine is simple too. It's schedule. And I'm going to tell you, it's all about timing and schedule for me. And it's going to lose because it's going to tie back into what you're saying. When I'm saying schedule, it means that you know the schedule and you know this. When you know what you're doing and you know what time you got to be there, here's the schedule in your hand. So I know what time I got to be there. I know what time I got to do the things that I need to do. So I know the schedule. And what do I mean by that? When the 49ers, if it's 3rd down and 10, and teams can pin their ears back. 49ers aren't converting. Right. If it's 3rd down and 7, and you know that there's a 7-step drop, guess what? The 49ers' likelihood of converting is slim to none because they don't have the guys up front to be able to sit there and take care. So that's what I'm talking about, schedule. That's going to be the primary reason this team wins the Super Bowl. or loses a Super Bowl. It's about schedule. When the 49ers on first down, because of play action, they do some things, fake it to McCaffrey, act like you're going to do a sweep, whatever, and now you got the defensive linemen set their feet, so now they got to restart, and he can go downfield. That's what schedule is, and you're ahead. When you can do that as the Niners and dictate schedule and pace, this team can't be beat. That's my opinion.
Why do you think Sean McVay is 1-9 against Kyle Shanahan since 2019? McVay has owned the NFC West, dominates the Cardinals, dominates the Seahawks. McVay's 1-9 straight up against Shanahan's Niners since 2019.
Because he tries to think like him. He's always trying to, because he knows the offense. They've both been in the same type of system. They still run the same type of system. So he's saying, okay, this is what they're going to do. And Shanahan understands what he's thinking, and he goes opposite. When he's zigging, he's zagging. And that's what, these are two smart coaches. And you're right. He hasn't had a lot of success because he's trying to play Shanahan's type of game and trying to outthink him. And then Shanahan is saying, look, I already know the way that he's going to play me. And Shanahan, and that's why I think that he always gets to McVay.
Sean McVay, 24-17 in the regular season against the NFC West, but 21-7 against Arizona and Seattle, and 3-10 against the 49ers. Very interesting stuff. Couple milestones to look for today. George Kittle needs 6 receiving yards to pass your buddy Antonio Gates at 6,280 yards for second in yards by a tight end in his first 7 NFL seasons.
Wow.
Travis Kelce's number 1 on that list.
Wow.
How about that?
I can tell you how about that. He's a Hall of Fame tight end.
Yeah.
Kittle is I'm just telling you, if he barring injuries and this guy plays 3-4 more, he's a Hall of Fame tight end. Because what you just said and what he's doing, and I don't think he had the quarterback yet. Earlier, Gates didn't, maybe a couple years when Drew struggled, and then but he had Phillip Rivers. He has some good quarter. And what Kittle's doing then, he's a Hall of Famer. That's amazing.
Rams milestone, I just mentioned it. Puka Nacua is currently 29 yards shy of the all-time rookie receiving record.
Amazing.
That hasn't been broken since 1960. He trails overall in the overall rookie of the year market to C.J. Stroud. But Puka Nacua, 101 receptions, 1,445 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns, 14.3 yards per reception. He's now the 3rd player to have recorded 100 receptions in his first season, joining Waddle in 2021 and Anquan Boldin in 2003.
Wow, great company to be in. And I think that Nacua is going to be right there. I think last night Stroud won it. Even though if he didn't win last night, I'd have gave it to Nacua because Nacua played more games. Stroud missed some games. The quarterback from the Texans missed some games. But last night, when the stage was big, that was a playoff game. It was win or go home. And the way that he played, I thought last night he made Rookie of the Year.
Hey, let's get out of here.
Let's do it.
Great couple hours, man. I've really enjoyed this. I think this might have been our best show. Thanks to John Lucan back at the mothership. Thanks to Tim Jordan.
Timmy Jordan. There he
Great
is.
Tim Jordan is here in the house.
Great on that.
Check out Warriors and Raptors after the game, or later tonight on 95.7 The Game. We're going to hand it off right now to Fox Sports Radio. Niners, I think, get the win, but I think it's going to be a close game. I would go low-scoring game, a lot of running. I think the 49ers win this game. I'm going to say low-scoring. I'm going to say 21-10.
I think it's going to be a shooter. I think it's going to be a shootout. They're going to let this ball spin around the court. I don't think the Niners are going to run as much. I think they're going to throw the ball a lot more today.
There you go. For Lo Neal, I'm Larry Krueger, and of course, we've been brought to you by Habas Law. You've been wronged. Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURED or visit habaslaw.com. You're listening to 95.7 The Game.
At Merrill West Credit Union, we're working towards a brighter financial future for both our members and our community, knowing that when you succeed, we all succeed. Let's get acquainted with our premier savings for new members, now paying over 20 times the national average.